Hey, what's going on, everybody? Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is King Wabi. Welcome to another segment of Crypto World Radio presented by Because Bitcoin. If you're listening to us from YouTube, be sure to leave some feedback in the comment section. And if you enjoy this content, feel free to click that subscribe button and turn on bell notifications so you're made awares when we roll out this kind of content. And I want to say, today is a special episode. Today marks the 14-year anniversary of the first Bitcoin block mined. And the famous Hal Finney made that tweet that says running Bitcoin, and that has been an absolutely legendary tweet in history, in my opinion. That forever changed the financial markets as we know it with this new digital asset class. And I'm here today joined by Big Airmass. I finally got him on the show. We're finally going to sit down with Big Papa Airmass and get to know him a little bit more and see how he came across the digital asset space. And I'm also joined by Coosh. We'll dive into him as well. And we're also joined by our friend Feel Payne. And, shout out to all you guys who are tuning in for this special episode. I want to thank you guys so much. And I want to inform you guys, if you want to join a vibrant community that's always active, feel free to join our Discord. It's up on the Nest. We have over 1,000 members now. It's all free of charge. You can find me in there pretty actively throughout the day. And if you also enjoy content here on Twitter Spaces, feel free to follow the Because Bitcoin page. And we do have multiple streams throughout the weekdays, Monday through Friday, usually 4:15 p.m. Eastern time, with our boy Carter, who covers the equity markets and more of the macroeconomic side of things, and then myself at 7 p.m. Eastern time, or a bit later or a bit earlier, depending on the time zone differences between me and the guests on the show. So without further ado, Big Airmass, welcome to the show. It's great to have you, man. It's been a long time coming. How are you feeling today, my man?
About what? Pretty,
Are you
feel
feeling?
pretty decent in general, I think, but, I feel differently about different things. You got to be more specific.
How are you feeling? How are you feeling today, man? Are you feeling happy? You feeling sad? Are you ready to roll like the bull you are, dude? You're always bulled up, man, and that energy that you bring, dude, is world class, man. Uh, so I guess we can start it off by asking, how did you come across Bitcoin and what attracted you to it?
So it was like when I first heard about it, like uh, can you guys hear me? It says my connection was lost. Can you guys
Yeah,
hear
you're
me?
good. You're good.
Yeah, we can hear you, man.
So I first came across it early, like, I don't know, like in maybe 2013. And a lot of people were telling me about it, and I looked at it, and I was like, oh my God, this is definitely like a complete scam. I'm like, oh my God, what is this bullshit? Like, how could anybody like take this seriously? Like, what do you mean you can't make more coins or whatever? So that was like my first reaction. And I didn't really properly understand it until maybe like end of 2016. When I, took another closer look and I went a little deeper, and that's when I, like a light bulb went off, and I was like, oh my God, like my mind was like completely blown when I finally like understood what was going on. And I just like piled in, very aggressively. Like I took a pretty big chunk of my net worth, and like, I wish I had gone like all in, but I, didn't quite do that. But I was just like completely blown away, right? By Ethereum as well. I started accumulating that too a bit later. And that's just kind of how it started for me, you know. So initial skepticism, and then just, so It was like the most amazing thing I had ever like seen or discovered in my life. Like when I finally understood it. So I guess that's what makes me so bullish.
Airmass, and how was the space back then when you got in relative to now? Like how was the onboarding process? Because I know back then, for retail to get in, it was a bit more difficult.
No, I wouldn't say that. I thought it was very easy. There were like lots of exchanges. I know that like a lot of them had like a waiting list. It was like, things got so crazy at that time that like, Gemini and like Coinbase and these others, like you just couldn't even get an account. Like people were like begging them, please, please take my money. Like, please. And they just were like, sorry, we just can't accommodate you right now. We have like too many people trying to open accounts at the same time. So it was pretty crazy. Um, but yeah, but there was, I thought it was, pretty simple. Although, like banks were like certain banks would like freak out if they like discovered you were sending funds to a crypto exchange. But other than that, it was pretty smooth. Uh, in some ways, maybe even easier than today to get onboarded. So I thought it was fairly easy.
Yeah, that's where I was getting at. Even when I tried signing up in late 2017, it took me a couple of weeks to get my account up and running. But today, with like a click of a button, you're signed up within a few minutes, and it's not just like Coinbase anymore. There's things like Cash App and Venmo that offer some pretty easy onboarding. So, what are some of the things that excite you in the digital asset space? On like, I know like some people say that you're just always saying 200K 300K by next month, but on the few times that we've spoken across other spaces, you do have some insights when it comes to fundamentals. I know you mentioned things like DAG sort of technology and things like that. So as far as like a technical perspective, right, or fundamental, however you want to call it, what are some things that excited you throughout your years in being in the market?
Believe it or not, so my biggest gain in crypto ever, believe it or not, was EOS, right? I made like 44x on that, or 45x or something like that. And but it was, I bought at the time of the ICO, and what they were pitching, sounded absolutely amazing, right? It was like decentralize everything, and they had the right team, and they had all, and of course, I bought into that, and it ran up really hard on all that hype. But of course, they didn't deliver like any of that, right? So like they made all these promises, and and they had a lot of talented developers, and they had, they were sitting on like over 5 billion in cash, and even with all those resources, they still couldn't deliver like anything remotely resembling what they initially promised in the white paper during the ICO. So I guess that's probably why it didn't do well afterwards. But I kind of just, got out, and that was like my biggest gain. But I wouldn't recommend, EOS to anybody right now. As far as like, I think if it's not Bitcoin, it has to be, really all about utility, right? It has to be something that solves, serious challenges and addresses like actual need. And so, like right now, I would say that I find the Cosmos ecosystem, Atom, to be like the most impressive in terms of tech and how it works. So I'm like super bullish on that. I think it's going to grow into like this monster, and I think it's going to be like it's going to deliver like Ethereum type of returns, in my opinion, like kind of like how like people that bought Ethereum in early 2017 and like the returns that they experienced. Like I think that Atom holders will experience like this similar or higher type of returns, because there's really nothing else that does that or works like that. And then there's a couple of other really cool things. Like I think that Thor Chain is really impressive because it allows you to swap native assets So inevitably, I think it's going to be heavily used. I'm pretty bullish on that. Uh, and as far as DAG, it's hard to say. I mean, DAG, again, it's all on paper. It doesn't actually exist yet, right? So it's all like it's been in development for years, and the only thing that's like promising is that they are like in phase 2 development with DoD and the military, and so their promises seem a little bit far fetched, right? And I would be very cautious. And like the only thing that gave me is I would thought, okay, well, probably the due diligence of the DoD are probably not total clowns, and they probably looked at this and assessed that there was something to it. Otherwise, I don't think they would have given them the contract. But there's really, the product doesn't exist, right? So it's kind of like you're just completely gambling on the team's ability to deliver, right? Whereas Cosmos like is fully operational, like everything on Cosmos works, right? So it's like totally different types of risk. So I'm perfectly happy like holding Cosmos like long term. So that's like, so if I'm looking at anything outside of Bitcoin, I'm looking at, okay, well, utility, like what kinds of problems does it solve? Do I see a lot of people using it? And so there's not a lot, right? And of course, just Bitcoin. I really think that it has a really good, 100x in real return left in it from here easily. And then it'll just probably, I don't know, move something. But he won't really move that much. But I think that, yeah, it's going to become kind of like, probably, in my opinion, replace the bond market or absorb all of that. So I think it's, I'm just always very happy to keep buying as much as I can and holding it. That's just my outlook on that.
Airmass, and talking about other developments, what are your what are your thoughts on DeFi being implemented in Bitcoin? I know currently, right now, there's like the Zeta blockchain, which essentially it's omni chain smart contracts that enables that sort of layer to be implemented on BTC, and then you also have things like Stacks. With their SBTC, which enables Bitcoin to be sort of like fully programmable, sort of like Ethereum, and how Ethereum is like the base layer for most of DeFi, really. And it's sort of like the analogy that Vitalik gave, where it's like, think of Ethereum, right, as a dollar, right? And then you're putting it into a vending machine, and then everything within that vending machine equals $1. And once you get it, you don't get your dollar. You don't get your dollar back. You just get something that's equally worth that dollar, but it's still within that ecosystem. Not sure if it's like making that much sense, but essentially it's essentially like Ethereum is this interoperable multi-chain sort of asset that can get wrapped around any chain, and they're trying to do the same thing with Bitcoin, but I'm not sure how that's going to look like. But if you want to share your thoughts on how that might look like, given that like you are knowledgeable in these things just as much as I am, I'd love to hear that from you, brother.
Well, here's what I think that a lot of people like confuse and use the terms decentralization and immutability, interchangeably, right? And they're actually different things, because you can have something that is immutable but isn't decentralized and doesn't actually need to be decentralized, right? Um, or you can have something that's completely decentralized but isn't immutable, because somebody can actually change the code, right? So for instance, like, it depends on the application. So let's just say if you're programming something simple like a light switch on or off, okay, um, and you want it to be done by a smart contract, right? Let's just say, you know, some Oracle is feeding it time, and let's just say the smart contract is programmed to turn on the light switch at 6 p.m. every day, Monday through Friday. And so for this kind of operation, right, you don't need, right, every node in the network to hold that contract. Is just sort of silly. Like if you're let's say sending like deploying a nuclear missile, right, you might want to maybe have like every node in the network to hold that contract. But for some applications, you just really don't. So for instance, if you had a server that had, immutable code running on it that was hash signed, meaning that it couldn't be altered because it has a certain fixed hash, and that's just it. You can't change it. And it's in one location and it's connected to the Bitcoin network. It would be a completely immutable system that no one could change. No one could change the rules, and it wouldn't necessarily matter that there aren't like 1,000 other nodes running the same exact smart contract, right? So I think it's kind of application dependent, and so you definitely could have um, you know some really powerful DeFi applications running on Bitcoin, where, for instance, you set up a server with immutable code, and Bitcoin is checking the hash, and if anything other than that hash is running, it wouldn't be allowed to run because it wouldn't have the correct hash, and it wouldn't be able to run. So, and only the original software that is hash signed with that hash that has been checked and verified or whatever can then run. And the fact that it's not like in multiple places at the same time, I don't think would matter. What people care about is the fact that someone isn't going to come in and change the rules of how something runs. Like if, for instance, let's just say typically DeFi would be I don't know, an exchange, right? So let's just say you're trading or doing whatever. You know for a fact that when you're running that hash signed program, that you can make withdrawals absolutely anytime you want, and nobody on earth can possibly stop it, right? Because it's running immutable code. So, decentralization isn't always necessary. So what's Ethereum doing is that it's making every single node in the network have a copy of that smart contract when it gets deployed, which actually really isn't very scalable either, right? If you want to run really super fast applications, for some applications that don't need that type of thing, it might work better if it was just literally one or two servers um, running immutable code that's hash verified by Bitcoin. And I think it would work really well and people would love to use it. Certainly, you could trust it a lot more than Binance or Coinbase or whatever, right?
Airmass, and what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on things like stable coins being deployed on Bitcoin? I know this past year, in case people aren't aware, Lightning Labs introduced Taro, which essentially it's a protocol proposal to allow for minting, sending, and receiving of assets. And for those of you who don't know as well, Tether was actually created on the Bitcoin Omni layer, and I think that's pretty cool. To be honest, so Bitcoin does have that capability to conduct those services. So, Airmass, would you say, right, over the next 5 years, if there's a stable coin, an actual true decentralized stable coin that works for the digital asset space and that is rolled out on Bitcoin, would you say that can be a case for Bitcoin reaching seven figures in the next 10 years? Because that to me would ultimately drive an insane amount of value towards Bitcoin, given that the network is the most secure um, across all the digital asset space.
Yeah, I'm not so sure that. I mean, for sure, we know that you can deploy stable coins on Bitcoin, but I'm just not so sure that it would necessarily drive its value. I don't think it would really be necessary. Like, I just think that, like, honestly, the thing about Bitcoin is that, you know, everyone is complaining about, like, oh, it doesn't have all these features and it never gets any upgrades or changes, and it never, nothing ever changes. Well, it's precisely because it's so hard to change is why it's so valuable, right? Whereas these other systems, other decentralized networks, like, they can be changed. They're not that difficult to change, right? It is literally, like, it takes years to reach consensus to make some kind of change on Bitcoin, right? And that is the value proposition, right? If Bitcoin was easy to make changes to, right, by some small group of people, then I think it would like lose its value proposition, right? And so what people complain about is actually its greatest strength, right? Whereas I understand that other systems need that, you know, upgradability and kind of more rapid execution to deploy changes, upgrades, and new features and things like that. But it's just a totally different animal. It's a totally different, like, it's kind of like a different investment. Like, I mean, I think some people, they sort of like become very territorial, and they're like, oh, it's Bitcoin only or Ethereum only or whatever. It's like completely unrelated things. Like, like, it's okay to own, you know, Microsoft and to own, you know, Boeing or Caterpillar at the same time. Like, two totally different things. They're unrelated, right? So someone could be a Microsoft investor, and they can also be, you know, a Caterpillar or a Boeing investor, and that's perfectly fine, right? There's no need to kind of like get hung up on, like, oh, well, you should only buy Bitcoin, you should only do this. Like, they're just two completely different things that do, you know, are designed for different needs. And so, you know, the fact is that, like, for example, I know for sure that if I, let's say, just left my coins in my wallet and I didn't do anything, and I don't know, went like surfing for 20 years, and I would come back and all my Bitcoin would be there, right? It would be working perfectly. I can't say that about any other digital asset. I can't say for sure that if I bought this other digital asset that I check my wallet in 20 years, it'll still be there, or it'll still work, or it'll still be accessible, right? I mean, this actually happened to me. Like, there was some, I bought some coin, it was called like Enigma, right? In
Oh
2017.
gosh. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and then they went to rename themselves to the Secret Network, and then I see that, oh shit, you know, like, my, you know, these coins that I bought in 2017, like last year, it's like, this is worth like almost $1 million. I'm like, great, you know, let me sell them, and then I discovered that I have no access to them. They're like, oh, you were supposed to, you know, send them to this contract to do the swap by this such and such date. And that date was announced on all of our social media channels. It was announced here and there. But you didn't do it by that date, and that contract is now closed. And I'm like, what the fuck? These are my coins, you know. So, like, this type of stuff, right? Like, you know, like, I lost a lot of money, right? Because I didn't know about some date because I wasn't following their stupid Discord channel or whatever it is that they have. Of course, I'm not. Who does that? Like, who follows all this stuff? Like, you know. So, like, I wasn't doing that. So I lost a lot of money. So, and so this is the thing with Bitcoins. You can just kind of, you know, accumulate, and you know, for sure, like, you can count on it to be there in a decade, 2 decades, 50 years, 100 years. I can't say that about anything else. So that's why the Bitcoin value proposition is what it is, and it's just going to go up regardless as to, you know, whether it has new features or it doesn't have new features. I don't think it's necessary for it to have new features or to constantly, you know, upgrade itself like like normal software, like Windows. Like, I don't. I think that will just only take away from it.
Thank you, man. Thank you for that well detailed answer. Guys, we're approaching that halfway mark. We're about close to 30 minutes in. For those of you that are newly listening in here on Twitter Spaces, I'm here with Big Airmass, a good friend of the community here at Because Bitcoin, and we're talking all things Bitcoin and crypto, and how he managed to come across the digital asset space, and also talking some value propositions. Brought up some people here on the speaker panel. We have Big Coosh. Coosh, I saw you in here, man. Wanted to bring you up, so feel free to add anything to the conversation. Good to have you up here, man. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year.
Thanks, man. No, I was just kind of listening, and I accepted the speaker invite. I wanted to kind of hear what you guys were talking about and hear Airmass. Happy New Year. Just kind of enjoying the conversation. Yeah, looking forward to putting last year behind us and getting getting this year started. Hopefully, the right way here.
That's what's up, bro. That's what's up. I see we had a Bashar with his hand raised up, bro. What's going on, Bashar?
What's going on, Wabi? What's going on, everybody? I just wanted to add the comment to Airmass. Actually, the beauty of the chain is that it's not, you can't change it. That's the beauty of it, right? Like any other chains, um, Bitcoin can't, like, in few years, you don't have to update nothing, right? That's exactly a benefit rather than everybody saying, oh, it's not. Every other chain, has its own different use cases and scenarios, but for Bitcoin, that's when it comes to, okay, a benefit for it is, one of its benefits is that strength is actually not, it's not, it won't be changed. Like a decade from here, 20 years from now, for a fact it won't change by any means.
Yeah, it's a feature, not a bug.
I've heard that. I've heard that before. So, Airmass, what are some things that you think the digital asset space has accomplished since you got into the space? Like, what are some things and developments that you can look back on and you can say that the digital asset space has contributed to the economy?
Well, I mean, well, it contributed to the economy by a lot of people going out and buying houses, watches, fancy cars with their crypto gains. I guess it benefited the economy that way, right? A lot of people did that. Um, as far as, I mean, adoption is still very low. It's still, we were gaining some traction, and then all these blow ups and stuff like that was a bit of a setback, right? So we're seeing kind of very low adoption, um, but yeah, I mean, it's clearly evolving. The use cases are clearly becoming better defined. More and more people can clearly see how this will work. And I mean, at one point, I mean, the DeFi was like literally like pulling away serious revenue from banks. Like, uh, I know ARC was doing research on this, and like last year, they were like, "Yeah, we can already see it's like hitting like banks at this point, like with like the DeFi, all those yields and all those, and there was some legitimate DeFi products like Aave or whatever that are not like were not scams or whatever that were like legitimate, and people were earning real yield, and they had the convenience of not dealing with a bank, and that was just sort of like a taste of what's to come. And I think that banks probably realize at this point that this is a serious threat, and I kind of see this evolving to the point where I think that yeah, I mean DeFi is gonna make the sort of the banking, and at least the retail banking industry, sort of obsolete, just like Uber made the taxi industry obsolete, in my opinion. So that's sort of inevitable, and I'm sure they're going to fight it as hard as they can. But ultimately, fighting any new emerging technology always fails. It's failed since the dawn of the horse carriage manufacturers trying to block vehicle manufacturers from making cars, and that didn't work out very well. And then it just sort of kept on going. We had the telecom industry trying to stop applications like Skype or whatever, that didn't work. And, it was, so all this emerging new tech is obviously, going to be change things quite a bit, inevitably, because it's just better, right? And it's only going to get better, more user friendly, more secure, fairer, lower fees, and benefit more people. Because obviously you don't have a central entity like Chase that is earning all this money. It doesn't, most of it stays with the users. So it's a better system, and ultimately it is going to dominate. So just a matter of time. So we're seeing, more use cases being developed, and just I think people are kind of just demoralized a little bit right now. A few setbacks, but it's not going away, right? I mean, it's something like that is going to be huge. You can see it. Anybody who's used DeFi can see it, right?
Bless you, Airmass. I think I heard you sneeze, brother.
Thanks.
Yeah, man. What's going on, Matt? We're just talking with Big Airmass about some fundamental stuff in regards to the digital asset space, and feel free to chime in, Matt. I brought up Taro, which of course I'm sure you know. Back in September of last year, Lightning Labs announced the release of the alpha version of Taro, and the TLDR on it is it's a protocol that's going to enable the issuance of fungible assets like stablecoins and NFTs and things of that nature. So essentially, it's like, I'm not saying it's going to take market share from Ethereum, but what I am saying, it's going to add more value to the Bitcoin proposition. So just discussing how that's going to look. And I mean, in my opinion, if there's anything that's going to take Bitcoin to seven figures, it's going to be things like that. I don't necessarily think it's just going to be like massive amounts of QE. Like QE is what gets the boat rolling. But I think when you're talking an evaluation similar to gold, you need that excess, you need that froth. So Matt, if you wanna chime in there a bit, feel free to do so. It's good to have you up here to join the conversation for the 14th anniversary of Bitcoin. It's a teenager now, it's going to high school. Bitcoin's going to high school, essentially. So, yeah, man. Airmass. Oh, go ahead, Matt. Go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say thanks. Yeah, thanks for having me up. I can't believe it's been uh, it'll almost be 9 years for me. Obviously, longer for some of you, shorter for others. But it does. It feels like just yesterday. It was 2019 or 2018 bear market, and we were wondering what lie on the other side of the horizon. Yeah. I think we all can stay humble and admit, we got some predictions right, got some wildly wrong. No one predicted the future. Certainly nothing between 2020 and 2022. But I'm excited for the next 9 years. That's for sure. I see Bitcoin and this entire space as only bullish over time. Short term, notwithstanding, that doesn't concern me. Long term, it looks like nothing but healthy adoption and greater respect from the world around.
Exactly. That's what I'm talking about. Airmass, how do you think Bitcoin looks like in 10 years? How does the digital asset space look like for the average everyday user of technology and people that want to get onboarded to the space? And feel free, the stage is all yours. You can talk numbers, you can talk all sorts of tech. The floor is all yours. Be as bullish as you want, man. This is your time, bro. How does Bitcoin and the digital asset space look like in your eyes 10 years from now?
Well, look, it's just like kind of like I was around when, like, uh, internet and email first came out, right? And like uh, people were like really struggling with this idea of what an email is and how do you send an email? Like, what is that? Like, they literally, like, I remember it, like, quite vividly. And and now it's like, it's like, like there isn't a human being that doesn't know what an email is and doesn't use email or whatever. So, and it, and at first, like with the internet, it was like, dial up, and the very first dial up modems, it was like, you could just like, turn it on, like, you want to load a web page, you can go and like make yourself a cup of coffee while you wait for it to load, uh, make the coffee, you come back, maybe the page loads by the time you're done making your cup of coffee, type of thing, So that's what people were using, right? And everyone was saying how it's like this is just not going to go anywhere. Like no one could see the internet, completely transforming the fabric of society as the way that it has. No one could see that coming. People thought it was just some, like, whatever, just a sideshow, right? And it's kind of like that with this. Again, it's just playing over, it's the same thing playing out again, except it's like a, technology that has, financial implications, right? It's a financial instrument as well. And so, of course, you're going to see like this become like commonplace and like the biggest thing ever, like the biggest, it'll just, uh, is just inevitable, as it is with every technology that we've seen emerge. Every technology that's first come out, at first it was like, oh, this isn't going anywhere. New York Times published an article before the Wright brothers made their first flight. Um, literally like months before, saying that human flight was at least 1,000,000 years away, according to scientists. They were quoting 1,000,000 years. And then we flew months later. Okay, they just couldn't conceive of it. They couldn't think of this idea that humans could cross oceans on aircraft. Like this seemed impossible, and that wasn't that long ago, right? So and then you have the introduction of radio and then television and all that, and always it's like this sort of very slow at first. So this is what we call S curve adoption, right? Where it's kind of, it goes linear at first, where it's kind of like, okay, some people are getting telephones. Telephone came out, some people are getting telephones, and all of a sudden everybody gets telephones, and then it just goes vertical, right? Adoption curve goes vertical. And so we're going to experience that in crypto and in Bitcoin, where the adoption is going to go from this linear kind of adoption to then it just goes vertical, where suddenly everyone just has to get some and starts getting it. And the price obviously will go vertical with adoption, because it is the only technology, right, that it also where it's interesting in the sense that all other technologies, right, decrease in price with increased adoption, right? So the telephone became less expensive with more adoption. The computer became much less expensive with more adoption. The television became much less expensive with more adoption, right? Vehicles became less expensive with more adoption. This is the only asset, the only technology where it becomes exponentially more expensive with more adoption, right? Because obviously by design and because of its scarcity. So, so that's what I'm expecting, and expecting any other outcome is silly, because we've seen, for 100 years now, that anybody that went against or doubted any new technology, right, always got just ran over. Everybody that doubted and thought that it wouldn't work, it wouldn't be possible, you just you don't want to take that position, okay? As proven over and over and over again. So this is why, to me, it's like an absolute inevitability that, in spite of everything that Bitcoin has been hit with, okay, all of the top economists and top investors and Warren Buffett and the head of JP Morgan, Jamie Dimon, and all these people shitting on it and talking smack and saying it's going to zero and all this stuff. And in spite of all that, worry and concern and confusion and, fears of government bans and all that, this one giant ball of fear and doubt, right? And here it is at hundreds of billions in market cap, and last year crossed the trillion. That is unprecedented. You have to admit that is absolutely unprecedented. And so it's obviously going in that direction where eventually, these people maybe sounded smart saying those things a few years ago, but it's going to get to a point here pretty soon where, you're going to sound pretty dumb opening your mouth and sounding like that, saying things like Bitcoin is going to zero or it's worthless or whatever. Like, people are going to laugh at you, whereas before they didn't. And so, and that's basically it. So the thesis here is that, look, you just want to accumulate as much as possible because the price is going to unimaginably high levels. Probably, I'm not bullish enough. I'm very bullish, but I think it might exceed even my wildest expectations as far as where it's going. And that's why I can't think of anything smarter than somebody can do than just to keep accumulating as much as they possibly can, to keep buying as much Bitcoin as they possibly can, because I think it'll create just unimaginable wealth for people. I think that in a few years, the idea of owning one Bitcoin will be inconceivable to the average person. They will think you're a billionaire if you have one whole entire Bitcoin. I think that's where it's going. It's clear as day to me. I don't know why other people don't see that. I don't know what it is that prevents them from seeing it. But to me, it's plain as day. I just don't see any other outcome. I don't see how another outcome is possible. All right. I just don't. No one's been able to present me with something like, here's why it just wouldn't happen. Here's why. I haven't seen one plausible, logical argument otherwise. And so that's why this is like one of those, the biggest opportunities of our lifetime. I don't see anything else that can do that. That's how I see it.
Thanks, Airmass. Thank you. Something a little nugget is the all-time high for Bitcoin last year was the same high that gold achieved in 1974 before it went on a parabolic run during the Volcker era. So as time progresses, right, there's a value proposition for Bitcoin to be that hard asset of a global reserve currency. But my question to you, Airmass, is how exactly does that look like in your eyes, right? Given that there's only 21 million of them on chain, and it's been proven that at least 20% of that has been lost. So for the average individual, right, how does accumulating Bitcoin look like now versus in the future? Because like right now, it's pretty accessible to buy 2, 3, 4, 5 Bitcoin, but in the future, as the asset appreciates and becomes more scarce, would you say that something like regulation could perhaps impede the amount of Bitcoin that someone could purchase? Right, because when an asset price appreciates so much in value at that point, then there's not much of it on the free market. But of course, things like derivatives do add paper Bitcoin into the market. But I guess a more concise question is: do you think regulation is gonna come into this market well before that happens, or do you think it's going to remain the same, and then when it does reset evaluation, regulation will step in? What are your thoughts on that when it pertains to Bitcoin and digital asset space?
I mean, I think it doesn't matter either way. I mean, every other technology is regulated, right? Every other market segment is regulated. It doesn't really make a difference either way. As far as accessibility,
you're rugging there.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
You're good. You're good now.
So as far as accessibility, the actual issuance, the actual supply is irrelevant because it's digital, right? So let's just say someone is, I don't know, let's say someone in Africa is accumulating $5 of Bitcoin per week, right? And let's just say Bitcoin goes to 2 million per coin. Well, they can still continue to accumulate $5 of Bitcoin per week, except now they're getting, I don't know, 0.001 Bitcoin or whatever. But when it's 2 million per coin, they'll be getting 0.000000001 or whatever Bitcoin with their $5. So it wouldn't change anything in terms of accessibility, in terms of people's ability to acquire it at any price, regardless of what the absolute number of units is, because each unit is infinitely divisible. I know there's 100 million Satoshis in a Bitcoin, but even a Satoshi could be divided if necessary. Like if it becomes so expensive that even like a Satoshi is too expensive, that you could certainly, because of the fact that it's digital, you could certainly then divide Satoshis into smaller units. So that wouldn't be an impediment in any way. And as far as regulations, I think doesn't really matter. I mean, I think if anything, regulation, if there was going to be like really heavy, aggressive regulation, we would probably see prices skyrocket, because that's kind of like what some of these bigger institutions are looking for to really step in. They want to see regulation. So like the hardcore Bitcoiners, they're not going to like it. They're not going to like the regulation, but it'll be good for price, right? Because these institutions be like, okay, we've got regulation. We can go and buy all we want. We can deploy trillions now because it's regulated, right? So it's just not something I think about. I'm totally unconcerned as to, whichever way it goes, still the only way is up over time for Bitcoin.
I see we have Nick B, one of our writers for Because of Bitcoin. Nick, I want to welcome you up. Welcome. Good to have you up here. Feel free to add any statements or bring up any questions, man.
How's it going, Wabi? Yeah, just came back from the gym and saw that you were hosting a space. And yeah, what a great thing to celebrate, right? 14th anniversary of the Genesis block, and the start of something that's really, really special. I know to a lot of us that are in this space, and people who value the history of money, the history of economics. It's a real line in the sand for that historical context. And over Christmas break and nearing New Year's, I was trying to take a little bit of a breather and just kind of focus on family and friends, but I couldn't help myself. I did do some more digging into the rabbit hole of the history of what even prompted Bitcoin to be born in the first place. And if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend that you check out this documentary. It's free on YouTube. It's called The Money Masters: The Rise of the Bankers. The Money Masters, Rise of the Bankers. And if you haven't seen this, it's literally a 3.5-hour documentary about the failures of central banking, going back not to the Federal Reserve, literally going back to the time of Jesus. So nearly spanning 2,000 years. And it's just, if that interests you, and if that's something that you want to dig deep into, I think that's a great place to start. And the reason why I think it's really connected to Bitcoin is I don't think Bitcoin would ever have been prompted if there wasn't these issues that are pretty inherent in the structures of economic society going back that far. And yes, they are, nothing ever is the exact same, but you start to kind of see a pattern in the way that there's these massive boom and bust cycles in the economies of the world. And it really is, when it comes down to it, due to the centralization of the money and the fact that when that power is centralized, that is a really hard thing for the human soul to withstand the greed of pushing the money printer button. I mean, it's a really simplistic way to put it, but that's kind of how I outlay it. Is, hey, like if I elected a random person to have, this money printer, that printed literal dollars, that was just, in their home, it was a perfect 1-for-1 carbon copy of a real dollar. I wouldn't be able to make that bet that person wouldn't be able to pull it in a way that's truly unsustainable for the world and the value of everyone else's dollar. And that's essentially where we are right now. We're really at a point in time where I believe that, Bitcoin is that next step in the evolution of money. And when I think about money, it really is just a technology, right? It really is just a way to perpetuate value forward in time, in space, and in scale. And the medium with which you do that is extremely important, obviously. It can make or break your entire economy. And do I think that, we live in a Bitcoinized world now? As much as I love the asset, I do still think that the aggregate market views Bitcoin currently living inside of a fiat system, which I think is pretty obvious to all of us. But we have to keep in mind that this thing's 14 years old. And on top of that, the monetary system, which it is proposing to replace potentially, its only way forward is self-destruction. And I'm not willing to give some kind of, time frame as to when that's going to happen. I just know it's inevitable. And it's inevitable because if you have followed the history of money and the history of the never-ending debt cycle that we're currently in, the only way to get out of an economic recession is to print the hell out of the money, and then you have even bigger inflation and an even bigger pop, and it just goes over and over and over again. And it's just, I don't know, man. Bitcoin is like the first, like when I figured out that problem, I had a lot of it's kind of depressing, like to figure that out. I mean, and you can make some money having knowledge in that and playing off of these massive boom and bust cycles, but it still leaves kind of like a rut in your soul. And I think that, Bitcoin really is like the only light at the end of the tunnel that I see right now in terms of a money that can withstand the pressures of geopolitical forces, that can withstand the pressures of evolving into something that has naturally become the best commoditized form of money. And yeah, I'll leave it there.
I want to open up the conversation to a certain chart that I've been looking at, and it's the global liquidity index when we're referring to long-term cycles concerning growth. And this statistic has never, ever failed. Bottomed out right in 2008, bottomed out in late 2018, and currently right now it's about to reach that bottom right around the second half of 2023. And I wanted to get your guys' perspective when it pertains to global liquidity. Do you guys think moving forward, Bitcoin would be looked at as a bet on global liquidity coming into markets? So a good comparison that I can give is like the early days of the NASDAQ, right? Like the late 80s, early 90s, mid 90s, right? That was essentially a bet on global liquidity coming in, and you had this major industrial revolution going on in America. You had all sorts of tech being built. You had hospitals, schools, car manufacturers, all these tech companies that were being built here in the country, right? Instead of just, outsourcing everything from China 24/7, like America wanted to build things in-house as well. So do you think there might be some sort of paradigm shift over the next 10 years where Bitcoin sort of becomes that bet for growth when it comes to digital assets? We can start off with Airmass, and then we'll just go down the line.
What was your question? Was about global liquidity?
Yeah. Essentially, do you think that Bitcoin could essentially be looked at as a bet on global liquidity coming into like the growth sector of a market?
I mean, I just think that the global, the global liquidity might be going up and down, but the sheer amount of capital that's out there, I mean, it's like hundreds of trillions globally, right? With more being printed every day. And there's just such a vast amount of wealth out there that I just don't think it's a factor. I mean, we all want obviously liquidity to just keep going up and up, but I don't think there's a shortage of liquidity, right? Even though it fluctuates, there's still an absurd amount of capital out there that can, regardless of what happens to liquidity going forward, that can flow into Bitcoin. So it's not something I'm looking at, because again, it's just going through cycles. It's going through sort of an adoption cycles, sentiment and things like that. That affects it more than actual, in my opinion, liquidity measurements, right? Because there is, capital is there. Just look at the amount of stable coins, not looking at the actual dollar liquidity, but the amount of stable coins that are in circulation now versus how many there were, let's say, in 2017. It's up orders of magnitude. And so that alone is capital that could, at a moment's notice can flow into Bitcoin when people feel excited, right? So that's just kind of how I see it. I don't think that we need to really worry about liquidity measurements, in my opinion.
That's fine. Payne, feel free to give your thoughts.
Yeah, I'm curious, Airmass, as to what you think. If you think it's going to be as time moves on, not seen as much as a risk asset or not.
Well, I think that last year kind of changed that paradigm a little bit, because I don't think that there was anything that wasn't a risk asset in 2022. So I think that the paradigm is shifting, because people are like, oh, well, this is a risk asset. Okay, what wasn't a risk asset last year? Even the dollar was, even though it went down the least, was down 8%, relative to its purchasing power. So even the dollar was a risk asset. So were bonds, U.S. Treasuries, stocks, real estate. Literally everything was a risk. Was risk. So I think that the whole idea of risk on, risk off, risk off assets, it's just sort of gone out the window a little bit. And I think that people are kind of just only now starting to wake up and realize, okay, I need to kind of reassess how I look at these things, because what I thought was a risk asset and what was a not a risk asset just got totally turned upside down, and everything was risk. like just breathing was a risk, right? So I don't know, so I think maybe, people will just view it as like, I think its relative performance, like the relative performance of Bitcoin and Ethereum has been exceptional relative to other things, because like if you bought, Amazon in the March 2020 crash, it's now the same price, and it's a great company, right? It's a great company, amazing business, same price as it was then. So you round tripped, right? If you bought, Bitcoin in the March 2020 crash, you're up 6x after it declined 80%, right? So if you bought Ethereum in the March 2020 crash, you're up 12x. So its relative strength to like many of these other assets is actually, it's performed much better. It's like, because people are only thinking, oh, how much did it decline from its all-time high? I don't think that's the right way to look at it. I think the right way to look at it is, how much are you up from before? If you were holding it for a few years, so let's just say you bought Meta in 2015, it's now the same price after you've been holding it for 8 years. You made nothing holding 8 years. Take somebody who bought Bitcoin 8 years ago. How much are you up in 8 years? Are you down? Are you flat? Or are you up like a lot? Right? So, so rather than looking at how much something declined from its all-time high, it's better to look at, okay, well, what is its relative performance? Like if you if you hold an asset, how is it performing over time? And the relative strength that we're seeing in Bitcoin and Ethereum is actually quite extraordinary given the market conditions, on top of everything that has happened with FTX and all the other fraud and theft and embezzlement that took place in the industry with Celsius and everybody else. So like FTX, like, so Lehman Brothers took down the entire financial system essentially in 2008, and the government had to step in. And if they didn't step in, it would have been like the end of the financial system as we know it, right? And here in crypto, like the FTX, given the size of the crypto market relative to the traditional market in 2008, like FTX is like Lehman times 1,000, right? And the fact that Bitcoin didn't like trade down to $500 after that happened is astonishing to me. Right, because, and there is no government coming in to bail out this industry. No one's coming to save it, like they did with all the banks, right? So the fact that there's no bailout, the fact that you had blowups that make Lehman look like a walk in the park, and it's still, given all that has happened, and you look at where it is today, I have to say that it's showing extraordinary strength. This is extraordinary. Like if someone had told me like last year that all this was going to happen, and that Tesla was going to sell, and Celsius, BlockFi, that the Genesis DCG group, the Gemini Earn would blow up, and FTX would steal everybody's money, I would say, I don't know, Bitcoin would probably go to like $100. Like that's what I would have thought. I actually was on Spaces talking about like, it was like, I was asked, what do you think would get Bitcoin to 5,000? I thought, well, I said, if Tesla would sell their Bitcoin, that might do it, because, people would just get so demoralized because they're already demoralized. And Tesla did sell their Bitcoin, and then a lot more shit came after that was 100 times worse. And here we are, and I have to say that's very, very, very impressive. That is impressive strength given all that has transpired. So I'm impressed.
To be fair, though, wasn't Lehman much bigger just in dollar amount than FTX?
Nope, it was much smaller relative to the size of the entire market. So in other words, if you take the entire cryptocurrency market relative, in other words, you have to take it in proportion, right? So FTX's size relative to the size of the crypto market, right, was much bigger than Lehman's size relative to the entire stock market. Lehman was a tiny percentage of that, right? And it dragged everything down. So FTX is literally like Lehman times 100 or 1,000, because the crypto market is much smaller, and the impact something like that would be much greater, right? Even though, yeah, Lehman, of course, is bigger than FTX, but relative to the size of the market it's in, Lehman was tiny relative to FTX.
Coosh, go ahead, brother.
Yeah, man. So really, really interesting conversation here. That's why I kind of had my hand up, and I think to get to your question, Wabi, you're asking a good question, because for those that are listening, your question implies, is there a way for me to front run, right, and get the best entry, and use something like this indicator as a way to do that, which is, we're all looking for an edge, right? And I don't know the answer, but what I do know is, especially in today's day and age, with technology and algorithms that are running, probably most of the big level institutional trading. I mean, we see it, I see it, right? Like standard technical analysis and all the patterns that they break out bullish and bearish. Like even the algos are all over those, right? Like you get a breakout and it gets sold down. I mean, they're so all over everything that's signaling these days. I feel like with something like Bitcoin, what's the best way to equate it to? It's something that has network adoption like we haven't seen, like Amazon in the early days. What's the market for Amazon? Well, anyone that uses stuff, right, that goes to a store. That's pretty much 90% of the world's population. What's the market for the hardest money ever created, or asset ever created? I don't seek to use Bitcoin as money. I look at it more as savings. There's 8 billion people out there. What percentage of them look at and value Bitcoin like that? I don't know, less than 1%. I have no idea what the number is. But I look at the looking at these network adoption stories in their infancy, and we're the 14th year. Look at any of those companies: Google, Amazon, Apple. In their first 14 years, a lot of them were flat, right? Like just kind of bounced around in this flat range, and then it's like the old disruptive technology innovation curve, right? You start with the innovators in a market, and that's typically 1% to 2%. And then you got your early adopters. And once you get past those early adopters, that's where you get that hockey stick type of growth. And so for me, it's more about when does that come, right? When does that come? And are we in a place in society where the thought of the system, and what Nick was kind of talking about earlier, is becoming more understood by more people? And it seems like it is. It seems like now, even versus 2 years ago, people are just kind of scratching their heads like, man, you graduate college. If you go to college and spend $200K, you graduate and you're making whatever, 80K, 70K, if you're lucky to start entry level. Like, how do you get into the middle class? Right? Like the system just doesn't work with the current addition and subtraction on each side. And it kind of comes back to the money, right? And those controlling the money, and creating what essentially has needed to be this perpetual kind of debt creation to fund the prior debt. And so the question for me is, when do we go from where we are now to like that next segment, which is the next 10-15% of the population that says, yeah, I gotta at least participate in some of this, right? What doesn't matter how much, because that's 8 billion people. 5% just say, I want to get involved and participate, like Airmass was talking about. I'll buy like $50 a month, whatever. It doesn't have to be a big number. When does that part happen? And I don't know. That's the hardest thing to predict. But what I do know is, if there's one door to go through, and like you said, 20% are lost, and there's only ever going to be 21 million, and I don't know how many, 18 million are mined so far. So there's only so much more you can get. When does that happen? I don't know. What I do know is when when this asset is this far off of its high, as long as you don't need that money for your daily expenses, your living expenses, and you're okay with um, not seeing it for a little while, that's a great time to get involved. And so that's kind of the way I look at it. Is it's so hard to outsmart because for everything we have access to, the algorithms, the big money has access to probably 10 times the amount, right? And so I try to keep it simple and just say, with a long enough time horizon, um, with an asset I covet, right? And it's all related to your level of conviction. For me, it's the more you're convicted. People always ask me, well, what percentage should I allocate? That's all dependent on how convicted you are, right? So I went to a really high allocation, but that was after 1,000 hours of going down the rabbit hole. If I hadn't done that, I wouldn't be allocated as highly as I am. So those are just some of my general thoughts.
Well, that's cool, man. Thank you, brother. Appreciate you, man. For myself, I've been talking to people who are a lot smarter than me. Carter does have an extended network of individuals that I've also been speaking to on the side for almost a year now. Guys like Trader XO that have given me a plethora of knowledge when it comes to more of the macroeconomic side. And so, with that being said, I think sometime in the second half of 2023, I think there's going to be a generational buying opportunity when it pertains to the digital asset space. Not to get into macroeconomics in depth, because I'll leave that to Carter, who's more knowledgeable than me in that field. But I ultimately think that coming out of a recession, um, crypto will do what it does best, and that's outperforming towards any trend that equities go into. So, if equities are trending up, then, the primary ROI, right, the amount of value that you can extract from this market is predominantly extreme volatility to the upside. Same thing with the bear market side of things. It outperforms predominantly with excess volatility to the downside, and with small mean reversions, and eventually an overall lack of vol. And I'm excited for that. I'm excited for that opportunity. I'm excited for what the digital asset space looks like as the Fed starts cutting rates, and whether they go back to QE or not. I'm not that guy to answer that question. Um, I just know with everything lining up and with the tightening that went on in 2022, I think that's going to be very indicative of the opportunities that we can scoop up some of these Ponzi's. So, with that being said, I see that we're reaching that hour mark, and we do have a few new listeners here. My name is King Wabi, and I present Crypto World Radio on behalf of Because Bitcoin, where I host individuals in the digital asset space, and they can be, individuals developing new protocols or people that have experience in like the institutional side of things pertaining to venture capital, private funding, market making, as well as some notable traders in the space. That have a great reputation um, in this platform called Crypto Twitter, not Twitter, but Crypto Twitter. And I also like to have community-based spaces where it's myself and some of the guys from the Because Bitcoin crew. And if any of you guys here in the audience want to come up and ask questions or add to the conversation, feel free to do so. But a little bit of a surprise for you guys. We do have Carter on the Because Bitcoin page. Carter, if you want to say what's up, feel free to do so. You can tell us how you enjoyed the latest episode of The Mandalorian, or how that AVAX tattoo is going along for you. Feel free to say anything, brother.
Hey, what's up, guys? Sorry, I'm out having some Thai food right now. I was just listening. No, great stuff. Great stuff. Airmass knows his stuff, man, with crypto. I thought Coosh had a lot of nice things to say as well. I just caught the end of it. I got a haircut, and now I'm having some Thai food. Basically, got the loaded fried rice, no black beans. They're not beans like they are in a Mexican restaurant. You know, they're cooked in like the Thai way or whatever. Double chicken, spice level 4 out of 5. Pretty spicy. You know, half my family's from Texas, so I've grown up eating lots of spicy food. I really like spicy food. You know, it is what it is. But been lifting well lately. Almost done with physical therapy. Feeling a lot better. Just ready for a good year, man. I hope everyone had a great New Year and a great Christmas. You're doing a great job, Wabi. You're doing an outstanding job. I told you that this morning, but you're doing a phenomenal job. You're busting your ass. And with the direction the brand is heading, you're going to make a ton of money, and you deserve it. So you deserve to be here. You deserve to be on the team. You're a valued member of the team. All the audience, we appreciate you all so much. Everyone who comes up and speaks, we appreciate you guys so much. Even if we are not in agreement, that's what makes Twitter Spaces awesome and such a great place to learn and sharpen your views, because it forces you to know what you're talking about. And that's pretty much it. I don't want to redirect the conversation, but Wabi, you're doing an outstanding job, man. We're extremely proud and pleased. So
Thanks, man. Appreciate the kind words. I would derive that from the discipline outside of the crypto market when it pertains to physical fitness and strength and all that stuff. I do think that individuals should have a passion before entering an endeavor such as investing. It keeps you entertained, you know, and also reaching out and forming a community. So that's why, like, I've been imploring individuals to join the Because Bitcoin Discord, because, you know, you might find someone who shares particularly similar interests to you, outside of investing in the equity markets and the digital asset space. So guys, with that being said, if you enjoy spaces like these, feel free to follow the Because Bitcoin Twitter page and turn on bell notifications so you can be made awares whenever Market Talk goes live. That's Carter's show. It's Monday through Friday at 4 p.m. or 4:15 p.m. Eastern time, and he covers things regarding the macroeconomics and the equity side of things. And then for myself, again, I host all of my crypto or Bitcoin specific spaces exclusively on the Because Bitcoin Twitter page, Monday through Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern time. But again, if I have a special guest and there is some time zone differences, it might be a little bit later or might be a little bit earlier. And that's why I implore you guys on a consistent basis to turn on bell notifications when you do follow the page. I do have some institutional grade level guests appearing on the Because Bitcoin Twitter page, and it might not be at 7 p.m. Eastern time. So I want you guys to really catch that, and you know, you'll gain a lot of value from that. And when you go inside our Discord, you'll see so much activity that, you know, not only will you gain alpha when it pertains to the equity markets that can help you in your direction with navigating the crypto markets, but you can also make lifelong friends. And you know, yesterday we had Trader XO on the show on Crypto World Radio, and one of our Because Bitcoin Discord members, Crypto Cleve, was writing me paragraphs among paragraphs saying how grateful he was because he got to talk to Trader XO. You know what I mean? And that just means the world to me, man. These Twitter spaces are honestly like such a revolutionary aspect of social media. Um, and I'm grateful. I'm grateful for the audience that you guys provide. You guys have shown consistent support. All of you guys here in the audience and the speaker panel. So with that being said, again, if you want to come up, feel free to press that request button, and I'll bring you up. But I do want to make some rules. Again, like I've been saying over the last week and a half. When you do come up here, please do not, and I mean do not under any circumstances, talk over each other. No bickering or cursing at one another. We have to keep it professional and respect one another's opinions. I see we have Vestige on here. Vestige, what's going on, my man? I know you haven't had a chance to speak. If you wanna go ahead and give some statements, ask some questions to Big Airmass or anyone else on the panel, feel free to do so, brother. It's good to have you on.
Yeah, I just got here late. I was in the gym, but I was just listening to you guys chat. I'll think up a few questions and I'll throw them in shortly here.
Yeah, no problem, man. No problem. Airmass, so I know we were speaking on like regulations earlier. For yourself, how does regulation in crypto work for yourself? I know you come from a tech background, so I'm interested to hear your thoughts on all of that.
Well, kind of as I said earlier, I think that it's sort of irrelevant. I mean, aggressive regulation would be bullish for prices because it would allow, more, institutional participation. Like I think that would, they could deploy trillions if we saw aggressive regulation. And really, regulation. I mean, to an extent. I mean, I just don't think that. I don't think it really changes anything. I mean, it's just kind of like it sets rules, but it doesn't change how the system works, how the blockchain works. So it's like, you're not supposed to cross the street on a red light, but I mean, you still could do it. Like, I mean, but there's regulation that you shouldn't. So it's not going to really change anything about the workings of the Bitcoin or how it works or what you can do with it. And that's pretty much it. I mean, I don't think it's just not something I worry about. I think people kind of worry about something that they shouldn't when it comes to that. It's been like the most discussed thing in the space since Bitcoin existed. It was always like regulation, government this, government that. And it was all nonsense, right? It was all just people thought literally someone was going to run into their house and arrest them because they bought some Bitcoin, like in the first couple of years. And it's not the case. You can't, Bitcoin is very decentralized. It's, everywhere and nowhere at once. It's kind of like, trying to regulate oxygen, I mean, you could set rules, but, it's up to people to follow them. And that's basically it.
I agree with you, Airmass, especially about the part where you said that it's like trying to regulate oxygen, because I think a lot of people only consider it from the U.S. perspective, right? But even if the U.S. has some like heavy regulation, which I don't think is going to happen based off like what people from the industry have talked to the regulators have said. But I think it would be net bullish also, like you said. I mean, it would pretty much give the green light to all institutions. I don't see why people are so hesitant about that. I think they're just scared from like having to, KYC to do Uniswap or something. But I feel like in 10, 15 years, I'm not sure if that's going to be like a possibility. I think as the space gets bigger and bigger, there's going to have to be some kind of compromise,
Yeah, I think even this Uniswap KYC thing, I mean, that's just Uniswap, right? I mean, and the older versions of the protocol are still usable, and there's nothing anybody can do to KYC that. And regardless, I mean, it's just I don't care. I don't care about regulation. I mean, it just doesn't. I don't think it's just every outcome is bullish, and aggressive regulation just means that, okay, they're going to want to breathe down my neck a lot more, but the prices will be higher. So, okay, fine. No big deal. I'm fine with that. So, I wouldn't worry about it too much.
Airmass, what do you think the narrative is going to be for us to reach a a six-figure Bitcoin. I know the last cycle we had, the stimulus narrative, and we had El Salvador, we had Tesla, we had MicroStrategy, we had publicly traded companies essentially go into the digital asset space and have their balance sheet with Bitcoin. So that was essentially the narrative for the last cycle. What do you think the narrative for the next cycle is going to be? What pushes us towards that amount? Because Bitcoin always has a narrative, always.
Yeah, so I'll say this, and after this, unfortunately, I have to get going because I have to be somewhere. But look, price is what creates the narrative, right? So it'll just one day start spontaneously pumping, okay, and violently rising, and the price will go, higher and higher, and then people will create narratives to explain it, right? So it's price drives narrative. The narrative does not drive price. So if, let's just say, we tomorrow morning Bitcoin started violently pumping higher, and I don't mean like a dead cat bounce, but like literally just like pumping like relentlessly higher and higher and higher, and it was like clear to everyone that it's just like unstoppable, just going higher. And what would happen is that everybody will start creating stories and narratives as to why that's happening, right? And that could be anything. It would just take whatever is in the news at the current moment that, whatever. They'll say, oh, well, people are, looking for some kind of a safe haven asset, or they don't trust fiat currencies anymore, or whatever. They're going to create stories, and that's it. When the price is going down, they create narratives to explain that too. So it's really just the price itself that causes these narratives, right? And the higher it goes, the more exciting the narratives will become. And it's not like some specific. It's not news or anything like that. Because we've had that kind of news. We've had news that Fidelity is making Bitcoin trading available to their clients, which is pretty big news, and it didn't really do anything. So it's not narratives. If the price starts moving aggressively, you will see all the narratives in the world to explain it, even though it has probably nothing to do with any of those things. It's just Bitcoin, it made a reversal and it's pumping higher, and that's it, because that's what it does. All right. Anyway, guys, I'm sorry. I have to go. I wish I could stay longer, but I got to be somewhere. I know Coosh can take over for me because he pretty much, we're on the same page when it comes to these things. All right, guys, I really enjoyed talking to you. Thank you so much for having me.
No problem, dude. It was an honor hosting you, Airmass. I hope
Thanks, guys.
I hope you
Appreciate
enjoyed
it,
yourself here. God
Thanks,
bless
Big
you, man.
Airmass.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Carter. Thank you, brother. Thanks so much.
Thank you, brother. Thank you so much, Airmass. I look forward to our next space. Coosh, we can continue the conversation if you want. If you want to come on the show tomorrow on Crypto World Radio, you're free. You're free to do so. I'll be glad to host you if you'd like. If you'd like that. So with that being said, I want to thank you guys for participating in another segment of Crypto World Radio for the 14th Bitcoin anniversary with Papa Airmass. It was invaluable having that insight from Airmass. You guys know that he's more of he's more of a shit poster that just says we're going to go to 200K next month. But when you do get to speak to him on a more thorough basis, he does have some valuable knowledge when it pertains to fundamentals in the cryptocurrency market. So it was great having him on here. On behalf of Because Bitcoin, everybody, I want to thank you for taking the time out of your day to hear me ramble with Big Airmass. I want to thank the speakers. Thank you, Payne. Thank you, Coosh. Thank you, Big Airmass. And also Nick. I look forward to having you guys on again tomorrow. And again, if you enjoy spaces such as these, feel free to follow the Because Bitcoin Twitter page and turn on bell notifications. And also check out our website. We are pumping articles left and right, and you can find all our social media links over there. And if you guys want to know how our content streaming works, essentially we have 3 shows. We have one in the morning at 11 a.m. Eastern time, which is called Market Check. We have our traders Premise and Snorlax and our CEO Max, and they cover everything from what occurred in the cryptocurrency market throughout the night and the wee hours of the morning, as well as some equity market stuff, such as how the market opened up. And if you guys are looking for more premium services, you can find that in our Discord. And as a matter of fact, I actually jumped in to the Giga Chat morning stream, and they hit it right on the head within like 5 minutes of the opening bell. Carter just told it how it is, and our boy Tempest told it how it is, and it was nail on the head precision. These guys are absolute snipers. So definitely be interactive in the Discord, and you might get you might get some of that alpha. I know that I've been learning a lot more in the equity markets by being more active in that Discord. So invaluable connections over there. And yeah, man, thank you guys so much. I look forward to speaking to some of you tomorrow. Have a good night. God bless you. Thank you so much. I appreciate every single one of you. Take care.
Thanks, Wabi.
Appreciate it, Wabi. Have a good one, bro.
The trading current is just math. It's just math. It has a 95.45% hit rate when we deviate outside of CP2 and CN2. All you had to do is recognize that 95% of the time when we get over here, under this blue line, we get some sort of mean reversion. So let's just assume you long right here. 95 out of 100 times, when I buy this, I'm gonna get some sort of bounce. It's just math. Look what would have happened as we move up. Look at the bounce that came after. And now look where we are. If you had just blindly followed the current, you take all emotions out of it, and you say, I'm going to trust the statisticians. You would have bought Dow Jones somewhere down here under 30,000. Depending on how you want to measure it from absolute top to bottom, 20% move. We also have multi-time frame alerts. You don't even have to be at your computer on TradingView. You can ping your phone. Now, the current has some really awesome features, and I would urge you guys to join our Discord to get access to it. We give it away for free as a tool to the community. It's just math. There's really no need to overcomplicate things, not even in the slightest.